Welcome to today's webinar, Universal Design for Improving Student Learning, not just for the deaf and hard of hearing students, with Donna Lang, Myra Peltz, and Denise Cavan. My name is Greg Nagy, and I am from The Ohio State University and provide technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline Project, along with Freda Walker. Before we start the presentation, I would like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 1 hour, and is being recorded in order to view this presentation in its entirety later. The recorded webinar will be available in the next few days on the napeequity.org website. For this webinar, we are using a live captioning pod. The default font size is rather small. However, you control the font type, font size, font color, and background color on your own computer by using the controls at the bottom of the captioning pod. Also, sometimes when moving between layouts, you may need to move the captioning scroll bar on the right side back to the bottom of the screen to see the current live captions. As you've already found out, you'll be watching the presenters present slides through the Adobe Connect interface while listening to them talk over your computer speakers or your phone. You'll be able to interact using the chat pod. All of the participants' microphones and telephones have been automatically muted. If you would like, you can make the presentation larger for just your screen by clicking the full screen button at the top of your Adobe Connect window. Click it again to return to the normal screen. You can also download resources from the Documents to Download pod. Click the file you want to download, and then click the Download File button. This will open the file as a link in a different tab in your browser. The presenters will answer most questions after the presentation. However, we can take questions at any time. This is how we take questions. At any time during the presentation, you may submit a question by typing your question in the chat pod at the bottom of the Adobe Connect window. We will read and respond to these questions at the end of the presentation. I would like to start the webinar by introducing Freda Walker, consultant for the STEM Equity Pipeline Project. Freda? Freda, you're still muted.
Good morning, Greg, and good morning, participants and all the presenters that we have today. We're excited to learn about the strategies that they will share with us. I just would like to remind everyone that our funding comes from NAPE and also from a grant from the National Science Foundation. We appreciate their support. There are archived webinars. You can locate them at napeequity.org. This will be in that same site, and you can look at ones from the past, so we encourage you to go to that site. At the end of this webinar, you can get a certificate of completion once you complete the evaluation survey. So Greg will explain that at the end of the webinar. We also have the resource documents, and Greg has already told you about how to download them. I would like to encourage you to do that so that you have them and don't have to wait till the end. Also, in the handout number 2, which is a handout from today's webinar, you're going to find all the resources that are referenced during this presentation. Also, the contact information for the presenters is located in that document. You'll also see that document 3 and 4 are specific documents that will be referenced during the webinar today. Again, questions and answers will be after the presentation, but I encourage you to use the chat function and put your questions into the chat function, and then we can get the answers at the end of the presentation. Also in the chat, I would like for you to encourage everyone to share the resources that they know about or strategies that they might use as the presenters present different topics to you. I welcome our 3 presenters, Denise Cavan, Donna Lang, and Myra Peltz. Also today, we're most excited because we're doing captioning for the first time in one of our webinars. We have some interpreters, Nicole Kraus Dickinson and Sarah Schmackenberger. Our captionist is Teresa Close. And so this is a new activity for us, and we appreciate the support that we have received from the Institute. Okay, Donna, you're on.
Hello, and welcome everybody. We're thrilled to have you joining us today for this webinar. I wanted to quickly go over what we're going to cover today. The first thing, we want you to become familiar with our background and our institution. We are all here from the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, and I'll explain more about our institution in a few minutes. I also want to go over the potential pitfalls and perils while lecturing in a classroom. We have a video that's to show you that's basically the worst lecture you could see, and we'll discuss how the instructor could have improved the lecture. We're also going to go over some basic information about the universal design for instruction principles and how we can apply them in the classroom, and also show you some resources that are available from our website at deftech.org. As I mentioned, all of us here are interpreters and captionists, and our presenters are all from the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. That is one of the 9 colleges of the Rochester Institute of Technology. Have you heard of Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C.? Most people know Gallaudet. It is a 4-year liberal arts college in Washington, D.C. We are funded by the government, the federal government, like Gallaudet is, but we are a 2-year technical college on the campus of the Rochester Institute of Technology, and are one of the 9 colleges of RIT. So if you look at this graphic here, you see RIT has the College of Business, College of Engineering, and then we have the College of the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. We are the first and the only technical college in the United States that was established for deaf and hard of hearing students. At NTID, we have about 1,300 students that come from all 50 states, from all over the country, and also from, we have international students that are here from about 20 other foreign countries. Our deaf and hard of hearing students work, live, study, compete in sports as the same community as the 17,000 hearing students that attend RIT. We've had 2 deaf presidents of the RIT Student Congress that we've always been, that we are very proud of. We offer associate degrees within the College of NTID, and then our deaf and hard of hearing students will transfer to the other 8 colleges of RIT to pursue a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD. Okay. So we are considered one of the largest mainstream programs in the country. We have 1,300 deaf and hard of hearing students on campus, living, working, studying with 17,000 hearing students. We have outstanding support services, as we are showing you an example today. Because of our experience with mainstreaming deaf and hard of hearing students in STEM programs, we received a National Center of Excellence from the National Science Foundation, and it's called DefTech. And there's our website, deftech.org. DefTech is under ATE. It's the Advanced Technological Education Program that focuses on 2-year colleges and STEM education. The goal is to provide the technical workforce with more technician level individuals and high technology STEM fields. Okay, DefTech is one of 43 ATE centers. We are in our 2nd round of funding, and we're in the middle of our 2nd year of funding. This is our goal. So our goal is to integrate more deaf and hard of hearing individuals into technician STEM jobs, where these individuals are currently underrepresented and underutilized. I like to say that skilled deaf and hard of hearing workers is an untapped pool of skilled workers for employers. I want you to look at this picture and think about it. And think about if you think this is a good situation or a bad situation. This is actually a human resource director told this to me. We just hired a deaf engineer and no one told me in the company. Do you think this is positive or negative for the company? If you have any comments, please use the chat pod. Any feedback on that slide? I don't see any, no? Okay. It's a good learning experience for the company. Milana thinks it was negative. I wanted to say in this situation, it was actually very positive for the company. They had worked with us for many, many years, probably about 10 years, and trying to develop a systematic procedures in their company for hiring individuals who have disabilities. So the company went through training procedures they had. They attended, so when they hired a person who was deaf and hard of hearing, they automatically had training for their coworkers and supervisors. So in this situation, it was very positive, and it showed the inclusiveness and acceptance of that company for an individual who was deaf and hard of hearing. And it became no big deal. And I think that's what we all want with working with individuals and teaching here at NTID of students who are deaf and hard of hearing. That is no big deal for a company to hire a deaf person. It's no big deal to have a deaf or hard of hearing student in your class, that they can be seamlessly integrated into the workplace or into the classroom.
Exactly. You don't want them to stand out. They don't want to be seen as special.
So, related to this, to make it a no big deal, I think one of the first steps is to improve instruction in the classroom and access to services in the classroom. So I want you to look at this video. Pretend that you are a student in this class. The video has no sound, just captioning for you to read. Oh, wait a minute, here it started. It's a networking class, so it's a STEM class. So I want you to look at it, and as you're viewing it and reading the captioning and seeing what the instructor is trying to teach the class, think about how you're feeling during this lecture. Okay, have you had enough of the video?
So this is what deaf students experience every day. That's what we're trying to give you a sense of what it's like for a deaf student, where supposedly there are being provided access because of the lecture.
So tell us how you felt about this lecture. It was only about 2.5 minutes long. And you can't see and read what's being shown on the screen at the same time. It feels exhausting, right?
And that was only 2 minutes.
Can't read the screen and very fast paced. Exactly. Here at RIT, we did a survey of hearing students and a survey of deaf students on instruction. And the number one issue that deaf and hard of hearing students had was pace of instruction. The number one issue that the hearing students had was pace of instruction. So when you slow down in the classroom, you're not only helping the deaf and hard of hearing student, you help all students in the class. So we have, it's difficult multitask. He kept using vague language, here, this, that, very good. So we have another video here. And this is the same lecture, but we've added pop-ups with comments to explain what the instructor is, how the instructor could improve their lecture. It shows the issue and then a solution to the issue. And it looks like you found a lot of them. Here's the video again. On our website, we have something called the Pacer Spacer. It's a little video that you can download that you put onto PowerPoint slides that are at different length. It can be 4 seconds, 8 seconds, 12 seconds. And it has a little, it's green, it's a little box. It's red, then it turns yellow, and then it turns green. And when it turns green, it's a signal for the presenter that they can start speaking. So that's one thing would help with the first issue, is if you, when you put a slide up, you just pause a few seconds, let the audience read the slide, and then continue. The second issue here was the instructor was facing the computer while talking on the board. If you have deaf and hard of hearing students that depend on speech reading, and they need, or even they need to look at your face, to read your lips, to see your expressions, very hard for them to understand what is happening if they can't see your face.
Yes, the Pacer Spacers on the website. Free download.
Oh, cool. This is important, and I noticed that someone in the chat had recognized that as well. The use of words this and that was difficult to follow and hear. Imagine being in a math class with an interpreter as well, helping with communication, and you have the professor say, add this number to that number, you'll get that result. How are you supposed to translate that to the students in the classroom? And if you use the vocabulary, you're also, if you use the correct vocabulary, you're also reinforcing the learning of that vocabulary. This is my favorite one. Not that one. I was the laser pointer. If you know, I don't know if you could see it very clearly in the video because it may be too small. But the instructor is sitting in his chair with the laser pointer going all around the screen. It looks a little ridiculous, but if you walked around the halls in the computer science department here, you would see that every day in these big lecture halls with this laser pointing up and down on the screen. Okay. Comments?
So these videos are also available on the website, so if you're interested, you could go through the entirety today, but you could go and watch them. Excuse me. We also have ones that, other ones that are similar with a teacher teaching an art lecture.
Right. The materials that, the videos that you just saw was one way of just showing how a professor in a classroom is not following universal design for instruction principles. And this is the goal of universal design for instruction. Okay, and it has to do with applying universal design principles to all aspects of instruction in the classroom. So you're looking at how you're delivering your content, the physical space in the room, how you're using information and the resources you're providing, technology, your interactions with the students, and how you're assessing. A universal design for instruction comes from the universal design concepts that are used in architecture today. And this is the reason why universal design in architects works is here today, is the accessibility to buildings and public spaces. The whole concept behind universal design is that you build in flexibility to the environment, to the built environment, than rather trying to add it on later. As you can see from the picture, it's not very attractive looking when you add on accessibility to a building later. The building on the, would that be the left, is from the University of Berkeley. It's the Ed Roberts campus, and you can see that beautiful red circle in the middle is actually a ramp that people can use to get to the different floors. And the building's just gorgeous. We said that's universal design. The concept is from about 1988 from Ron Mace and his colleagues at the North Carolina State University. They defined the term universal design. And the intent of the universal design is just to simplify life for everybody by making products and the environment more usable by as many people as possible at little or no cost. And that this universal design benefits all people. And just quickly, I don't know how well you can read this poster, but there's these are the 7 principles of universal design, and I don't really want to go through them in much detail, but they are basically equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information, tolerance for errors, low physical effort, and size and space for approach and use. And if you can see the pictures on there, you can see like the first picture there is the automatic doors. And the second pictures are scissors. Left-handed and right-handed. You have the doorknobs that are easier to use. There's also the entrance for a wheelchair. It looks like it's in a metro system or something. So if you look at these not only benefit people who have a disability, they benefit all people. If you're looking on, you're looking at the automatic doors, if you have a stroller, your hands are full of groceries, you're in a wheelchair. Another one is curb cuts that we all use on the sidewalks today. If you have a stroller with a baby, again, it not only helps the person who may be in a wheelchair, but also anyone who is having a stroller or any. Yep.
I have another example. The captioning that you see on television programs of universal design. Originally, captioning was designed for deaf and hard of hearing people or people who couldn't understand the sounds on TV. But now it benefits everybody because people who are learning as a second language use that. Small children use it for help learning to read. Also, captioning often is on TVs in noisy restaurants. Also, if you want just audio off, you can still watch television with the captioning on, so it's not just for deaf.
Another type of, this is universal design for learning, and this is applied to curriculum development. And universal design for learning is based on a set of principles that give all individuals access to learning and opportunities for learning. It helps educators provide a framework for understanding how to create curricula that meets the needs of all their learners in the classroom. Universal design for learning is based on neuroscience, which shows that we have 3 broad networks in the way our brain works. The first one is for recognition, and that's the what of learning, or how we gather facts, how we categorize what we see, hear, learn, read, how we identify letters. And the principle for universal design that follows this network is that instructors, teachers should provide multiple means of representation, that you should present information and content as in many ways as possible in your curriculum. The second network is the how of learning, and that's how planning and performing tasks on how we organize and express our ideas. And the principle for this is provide multiple means of actions, differentiate the ways that students can express what they know and learn. And we just had our lights go off. I don't know if you noticed it. Guess we're not moving enough in here. The third network for your brain is the one on the why of learning. And this is how learners get engaged and stay motivated, how they're excited and challenged and interested in learning, and how instructors need to stimulate the interest and motivation for learning by providing more ways of engagement for students in the classroom. You can see the web address there for the website for this. There's a lot of detailed information, including this, which are more guidelines, learning guidelines, a set of checklists on what instructors can do when they're developing curriculum. So these guidelines can be used for anyone who plans lessons, who develops curricula, your goals, your methods, materials, assessments, and these can be used to reduce barriers and to meet the needs of all learners in your classroom. So this gives a bunch of examples for you on how you can do multiple means of representation for Principle 1, how to provide options for perception and language and mathematical expressions and symbols and different. The second one, with multiple means of actions and expression, these provide options for physical action, expression, communication, executive function. And the third provides multiple means of engagement, options for recruiting student interest, sustaining effort, and for the students in the classroom. So I invite you to look at the resources on the website. There's much more that we have time to go into today. And again, this is basically for curricular development. Deaf Tech, we are more interested in the universal design for instruction that we started with. So we started with universal design for instruction that involves the universal design principles and also some of the universal design for learning principles. Again, the goal of universal design for instruction is to maximize the learning of students with a wide range of characteristics by applying UD principles to all aspects of instructions. That means the delivery, your physical space, your information resources, technology, your interactions, and assessments of the students. There are 8 principles of universal design for instruction, and as you're looking at resources throughout the internet on the web, you'll see variations of this. I am taking this information from the Do It Center in Seattle, Washington, and again, the resources are there for you. So let's look at this, and we can tie these 8 principles back to that lecture we saw in the beginning of the webinar. So the first class climate, the first principle is class climate, which is that as an instructor, as a teacher, you should be demonstrating respect for diversity and inclusiveness. We need to avoid stereotyping our students. So how can we show students and create in a classroom environment that is inclusive and accepting? Does anybody have any examples on how we can do that? One popular way that instructors do this is they use statements in their syllabus that avoid deaf jokes. Exactly, yeah. In that video that we showed you in the beginning, actually the teacher at one point later on in the video says to the like an interpreter in the room, "Can you please help those deaf kids? They're behind in class." So I don't think that's creating an environment of inclusiveness. Faculty often put statements in their syllabus stating a willingness for accommodations, giving students information on how they can request accommodations. Second, interaction. Okay, you want to encourage regular and effective communication between the instructor, the students, and their peers. One way that I know I have done this in my class is that we set communication expectations at the beginning of class. That you have one person speaking at one time, so everyone in the class can follow what's going on. I know some instructors have used like a beanie baby or like a ball that's passed around during the class, and whoever has that object has the floor to speak. The third is physical environment and products. You want to make sure that your facilities, your activities, and materials are accessible by all. For an example here today, making sure there's a good line of sight between your deaf and hard of hearing students and the interpreter. The video that we watched, was that PowerPoint accessible? I don't think so. The first video, the PowerPoint. The fourth principle is delivery methods. You want to use multiple methods to deliver content, and if possible, allow students to select it. There's today, right, someone just mentioned that in the PowerPoint, the font was way too small. Yes, it was. That was intentional as well. So back to delivery methods. Today, there's all sorts of the technology that you can use. Faculty are using flipped classrooms. They're using a lot of online content. There's other examples. You could be using cooperative learning groups, individual projects, hands-on activities. All these ways to deliver multiple methods to deliver your instruction. The fifth, information, resources, and technology. You want to make sure that your course materials, your assignments, and notes are available on demand. It's good to post your PowerPoints, assignment, notes all online before class so students can be prepared for your class. We had an example here where we were working with some professors, and the professor started posting her notes and her materials online before class. And she noticed towards the middle of the class, and she was posting these for the deaf and hard of hearing students in the classroom, and also for the interpreters and other support that was in the classroom for the students. She noticed like halfway through the course that the grades seemed to be getting better and better for all of the students in the class. And she asked the hearing students, how many of you have been using the notes? And most of them raised their hands. So she had evidence for her and for her students, which she would show later to other classes, that if you are posting these, reading these posted notes and materials before class, they really help with the learning during the classroom. And this is another example of using your universal design for instruction principles. Not only help the deaf students, they help all the students in the class. Okay, feedback. You know, this is good teaching. You provide feedback, specific, ongoing feedback during the classroom, during the class. Be a contributor to online discussions if you're posting your information online. Assessment. Regularly assess students' progress with multiple methods and tools. You can assess both group work, individual work. You can have written and hands-on assignment feedbacks. One of the things that we work with is low-stakes writing assignments and feedback on low-stake writing, and having students do many writing assignments, especially in STEM class. In STEM classes where it's low-stake writing, so students are not expected to be watching their grammar. You can give them feedback on their content and their ideas without the students having to worry about grammar, correct English, your spelling, all of that.
Right, so for example, at the end of a class, a student can talk about, just write a couple of sentences about what they didn't understand about the class, or in the beginning of a class, they could write about what do I hope to learn in this class. No feedback back to them, but the teacher's getting feedback about what it is the students.
Or another example
Or
would be,
struggling.
right, what were they confused about during
Right.
the lecture? And as a way of assessing the student's learning. And the last principle is accommodation. You need to plan for accommodations for your students that may not be met by instructional design. If you have a student who's coming in, if you have a student who's enrolled in your class who may use a wheelchair, make sure that there's enough room in the classroom, that the space is accessible for them. If you have a deaf and hard of hearing student, they may want to sit in the front near the interpreter. Or if you're on a field trip, how do you accommodate the needs for that deaf and hard of hearing student?
Right, for students with low vision, do you have ability to magnify notes or that kind of thing?
Okay, this is advice for the universal design process on how instructors can address universal design process. And you need to be considerate of the students' individual skills, their learning styles, but also their age, their gender, their sexual orientation, their culture, their abilities, disabilities. This all is involved in the class climate, showing respect for your students. Here is a list from the Do It Center that shows what instructors can do, and it gives, and again, there's the URL for it, and we also Freda also has the resource page that all this information will be on. And it shows ways that the faculty, what they need to do to incorporate the Universal Design for Instruction principles and how they can go about this. And you can't see them now, but it lists 5 principles on how to identify the course and describe the course to the students. Define your universe, which means what students will be taking your class, the overall population of the students, involve your students, consider perspectives of students and their diverse characteristics in the class, adopt instructional strategies. Again, you have like flipped classrooms, apply instructional strategies, plan for accommodations. And one of the things for planning for accommodations is you have to know how your college and school, how you request accommodations for the students. And evaluate how to monitor the effectiveness of your instruction through observation and feedback from students. And again, lots of materials on this on the websites from the Do It Center, and also different resources on the web that we've listed for you. And I suggest that you look at them in more detail than we have time to do today. Just wanted to give you some basic information on universal design for learning, and universal design for instruction. So I see a question there. Do any of our students take online courses? They do. And tips for online courses. I think for our students, the #1 issue would be captioning of videos. Other than that, our research has shown that many of the deaf and hard of hearing students prefer online courses because they feel like they have equal access to the course. And
we have to make sure that everything is captioned for those online courses, and then the discussion is not based on audio access, but based on visual typing access. So we have to make sure that everything is handled via text, but honestly, most students enjoy the online coursework. so that they feel more on par with students who are taking the course.
So I wanted to share with you some of the resources that we have developed for Deaf Tech on our website that may be able to help you with some instructional strategies if you have a deaf and hard of hearing student in your class.
We're working on one for UDI that's coming soon.
Back to this one. So what I want to show you today is the best practices for teaching. That's the first resource you see there on the page there. And the best practices for teaching section of our website is basically set up to describe challenges that teachers face in the classroom when they have deaf and hard of hearing students enrolled in their classes, and the strategies that you can use to address them. We also have information on itinerant teachers. There's information, there's the perils of lecturing, the networking video that we showed in the beginning. We also have a bunch of videos that we'll also share with you on student perspectives, and teacher perspectives on about universal design for instruction. We also have some teaching tools.
I believe the Pacer Spacer, you can find that under teaching tools. If you're interested in using.
Here's an example. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it talks about the first day of class. So how you can address strategies for addressing the pace of instruction, complexity, how to use visuals effectively in the classroom, how to get attentions of students in the classroom, and so on. And here I just wanted to give you some examples of the student perspective videos we have. So I'll wait for Greg to put the videos up. And these are students here at NTID that are giving us, at RIT here, giving us their perspectives on what they would like teachers to do in the classroom.
My name is Andrew Donald, and I am majoring in biomedical science in the College of Health Science and Technology. The most important thing that new faculty should know about deaf students is that we are very visual. I feel that new teachers seem awkward about how they should work with deaf students. I would recommend that they demonstrate what they are teaching with pictures, PowerPoint slides, and draw on the board as much as they can. I am a science major, and in some specific classes, you are expected to learn very detailed procedures from start to finish. I would suggest that new teachers draw everything out so that students can look at the board and easily understand each step in the procedure. Sometimes I take my own notes on important information that's discussed in class, and while I'm looking down to write, I miss something that the interpreter just said, so it's helpful for me to be able to look at the board and figure out what the teacher is discussing. Another problem for deaf students is if the teacher focuses on only lecturing, there are no visuals at all. Then the information goes right over my head. Having some PowerPoint slides that list the important points of the lecture are helpful because we can then use that as a reference as you expand on each point.
The next one I believe is Candace. Going to talk about her teachers she experiences in the classroom, a situation she experienced.
I'm Candace Matthews. I'm a mechanical engineering student from the Kate Gleason College of Engineering. The The first tip I would give is a lot of times when teachers write, they write on the board and they pause and talk into it. Because I read lips, it's very hard for me to know what they're saying when they're talking away from me. So it's a lot easier for me to keep up and understand if the teacher writes on the board and turns to face the class and explain what they wrote. So a lot of times I miss out on the actual explanation because I can't see their face. Another tip that I would give them is oftentimes teachers will walk around the classroom and sometimes they'll just walk right past me and I'll just be like, because they'll walk right by and I don't know what they're saying with their backs turned to me.
We also have perceptions of faculty who have been teaching deaf and hard of hearing students for years. We'll wait for Greg to get those videos up. We have several more videos from students, and we have more from faculty that cover a wide range of challenges and strategies to address them.
My name is Sharon Mason. I am an associate professor in the Golisano College of Computing and Information Sciences. The first is I try to avoid using the words this and these, that and those in my class all the time because that's just way too vague, especially when we're talking about very detailed subject material in class. The other thing I like to do is be sure to always repeat a question that comes up in class and even a response as discussion starts in class, and sometimes it's not always orderly. People get excited about a conversation, so trying to slow that conversation down, being sure that only one person is talking at a time so that the interpreter can interpret that part of the conversation, and then, as I said, repeating any questions that come up from people in the class, and then repeating answers that come up can be effective in that.
And then tip from Carol. We were pretty good in that people noticed the this and that in the Pairs of Lecturing video in the beginning.
Hi, I'm Carol Marchetti. I'm an associate professor of statistics in the College of Science. The first thing that I would do during a lecture is to make sure that when I ask a question or ask for input that I wait, because I need to allow for the lag time that occurs, for an interpreter to actually sign my question or a C-print person, right, to type it in. And so I try to wait and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to respond and not just call on the first person who raises their hand, right, or take the first answer that someone might shout out and be done, because then by the time, right, your deaf students can miss out on it altogether.
Very good point. On our website, we also have a top 10 list. It's the top 10 things that deaf and hard of hearing students wish teachers would do, or they would like teachers to do in the classroom. And if you can see that, the number one thing is don't use words like this and that. And there's top 10s with an explanation on how this can be used in the classroom. It's available on our website, and people have found this very helpful. We also are developing resources in math. And if you look on the menu, we have some math video tutorials, and that's what I'd like to share with you really quick. I think we're starting to run out of time. So I'm going to quickly go through these. We have pre-algebra topics and beginning algebra math tutorials that were developed by Gary Bellato Valley, who's a professor here in the math department at NTID. And he was trying to implement a flipped classroom in one of his math classes and was using the Khan Academy videos, and soon realized, even though those videos were captioned, that they weren't accessible for his students, because as they wrote on the screen, they also were speaking at the same time, and it was difficult for the students to watch the math formulas being written and also read the captioning at the same time. So Gary has developed a model for doing tutorials, math tutorials, for, that provides more access for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, or may have other, or may have language difficulties or processing challenges. I'm going to show you quickly just an example of, oops, I'm going the wrong way, Gary's video. And what Gary actually does in these videos is he signs the videos, signs the content, and then you'll see he'll stop, and then he'll write on the area of the board, and then he'll start signing again. He actually signs these, a whole lesson, then goes back and voices them, and then goes back and captions them. It's a long process, but it's proven to be very effective with students who need help in some algebra concepts.
Okay, hello. For this vlog, we're going to use a graphing method again for a system of two equations. We have two equations here in front of us. The first one being y equals 2x plus 1. This thrills me because it's ready to graph. I don't need to do any work to isolate y. Second one would be is negative 4x plus 2y equals 10. The second equation does need some work. Now this system is a unique system or special system, and we'll see what happens as we go through the vlog. For now, we're ready to graph both equations.
So this is basically what I wanted to show you, how this strategy he's using in here, how he stops and lets you follow the writing. A student who's depending on the captioning, it's very difficult to watch the captioning and also write, follow what he's writing on the screen, which you often see in the Khan Academy videos. And there's some other resources that you might be interested in. There's a very interesting sheet for analyzing word problems. And I think we better hurry up so we have time to take 1 or 2 questions. We may be over time already. Here is the reference listed, the references that are in the content that we used in the webinar today. I believe Freda has also put this in your reference paper that's available on the website. So what we have here for you to take with you is the best practices for teaching from our website. The 10 top things that deaf and hard of hearing students would like their teachers to do. Also from our website, and some information on principles of universal design for instruction from the Do It Center and University of Washington, and other resources on universal design for learning and universal design. I'm hoping we have time to answer a couple questions.
Yes, we do have time, and we'll just take the time. People are still with us, and here we go. We have a question. Is the spacer pacer available to the public?
Yes, it is. It's on the website under the Best Practices for Teaching section.
Okay. Is that something we can use in a hearing high school, I assume HS, with our deaf students who use an interpreter?
Absolutely, and I would use it for whatever audience that you have. I actually wanted to put it on the PowerPoints for today, but through the software we're using today, it wouldn't work. I know when I go to a conference and someone's up there giving a presentation and they have this big slide with all this information and all these numbers, and you're trying to read it and the person starts talking, it's very frustrating. So once you get used to people pausing and letting you read the PowerPoint, you'll notice how much information you're actually missing when someone doesn't do that.
Sounds like something all of us should be using. Okay, the next question has it says often a lot of the spelling on the TV captioning is misspelled, and so they want to be able to show documentary films in class. So what is your suggestion on that?
And I think they're referring to auto captioning.
Right.
Not to yours, but when you're showing films.
Right. But,
well, captioning is better than it used to be. It used to be really bad. I mean, if it's really off, you should go ahead and perhaps contact the distributor of the video and ask for it to be redone. But for the most part, the captioning is usually fairly accurate and you can understand what they're intended to say.
and often teachers use videos from YouTube that are not captioned and use the automatic caption from YouTube.
And those are not effective.
And as Denise just said, they are not effective at all. So if, again, this has to do with planning your accommodations, one of the UDI principles, and that if you're going to be using a video, you should check to make sure it is captioned, and if it is not captioned, you need to contact the developer of that video and ask for the rights to caption it, or ask them to provide a captioned copy of the video.
I understand for brief video clips, you can try to caption it yourself if it's a very brief video. If not, you should send it off to be professionally done. Not use a voice recognition software for captioning.
Okay, thank you. The next question is one, are there any sort of short training modules or professional development that can be used in a school district or an agency or an institution? What's the best way to work with teachers that do not have exposures to the strategies you've described today?
Well, the website has a lot of strategies. We do
Like the
offer,
class act.
right, sorry, the class act portion. Depending on where you are, we do offer special workshops through our grant within specific regions of the country. Texas, Florida, California, and the West. So you can contact us through the website and know if anything is in your area. Otherwise, I think there's really a lot of information on the website that would be very helpful if you can share it with your teachers.
Thank you. This is the next thing. It says, let's see. I typically try to provide information about working with interpreters, that online interpreters' responsibility that helps in most situations. That was someone that responded. And they also said, another person indicated that their college provides note takers if the student requests this service. So that would be another way to implement a strategy. The next question, the person asked, when you make PowerPoints available to students, did that impact students' attendance? My many students asked for PowerPoints so they don't have to come to class. Is that an issue?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think that hasn't come up. Denise says not in her class. I don't think it was an issue in my class.
They have to come to class.
Depends on the expectations that you set in the class.
Okay, the next question. What about the deaf and hard of hearing kids that want to go to college, however are so far behind in reading that they understand ASL, but reading is minimal? What are your suggestions? The reason is not because of the ability, but because of being taken out of school for multiple years or no access to any signs, whatever. Please give us your ideas.
This is $1 million question, and if we could solve this, we probably wouldn't have jobs because there would be no need for schools for the deaf.
That's a whole different ball game. Our grant is focused on college-bound students. But if you're talking about those who are so severely impacted by language deficiency, it becomes about developmental or remedial education and less about access. So it's a ball game.
Thank you. The next question, have there been conversations at Gallaudet, I don't know if I said that correctly, and NTID about creating a Deaf Center CAN Academy concurrent enrollment option for deaf and hard of hearing students nationwide?
That would be interesting, though.
Okay, so
With a summer program for students who are almost ready for college and they need just a little bit of a boost. And that is an online and in person, but it's not exactly like a Khan Academy.
It's also not in partnership with Gallaudet as well.
okay, but an interesting idea that could be pursued. Thank you. The next question, any suggestions for deaf students taking online courses where teamwork is required, usually using Skype or Google Hangout?
Yes.
I have had frequent meetings through Google Hangouts with an interpreter. And the interpreter can either be sitting in the same room with me or can sign in from a different location.
Let's see, I'm trying to see if there's...
You just have to be aware of the pace and turn taking. So just be careful with that.
Okay, another question that came up. They wanted to know which program that the instructor was using to make the videos, the math videos. What kind of a program was he using to create those?
Oh, Camtasia. Camtasia.
We
He
use
uses Camtasia.
Okay, thank you. Last question that I have here. Any advice on how to achieve the results but limit the time and resources needed, like free software? Our organization largely does PD, and time and resources are program's largest limitation. So having professional development and time and resources. So how do you break that barrier? Is there free software?
Software to provide
Professional development.
Could you clarify that question?
I think what they're asking is how do we get professional development when there's limited time and resources for an institution?
Patricia there answered that Western Virginia Department of Education offers UDL classes online that is free to schools, so I guess I would look for online resources.
There will be a new federal funded center called the National Deaf Center on Post-Secondary Education for the Deaf, and they may offer some classes online that may be 3 weeks each, and they're all free.
Okay, and if you look in the chat, you can see that Casey has indicated, I'd like to know what resources we can suggest to a site to limit their time and resources spent to create, the accessible resources. So I think that you've given some suggestions on places to look for those. Okay, I think those are all of our questions, so I'm going to move forward and just to remind people about NAEP and the services that we provide in professional development, in research and evaluation, public policy and advocacy, and technical assistance. I suggest that we ask for more technical assistance from NAEP that has to do with deaf and hard of hearing resources. Just again, we can do customized webinars, and maybe that would be something to do for this particular topic. We want to encourage people to come to our national summit. We have toolkits, infographed wall art, and consulting services. They can be in person, they can be in hand, or they can be online. You can see some of the different toolkits. We have 3 currently. We have 3 more that are coming out in 2017, so I want you to look for those, and we'll be doing some webinars on them. We also have our the Pipeline Press. If you sign up for that, you get information on a regular basis about equity resources. We also have the National Summit. It's April the 24th. Starts April the 24th. It's in Arlington, Virginia, and you can register currently for that on the NAEP website. I want to thank our presenters, Denise, Donna, Myra, Nicole, Sarah, and Teresa. I just think it was a terrific experiment for us to be having the interpreters and also the captioning, so thank you for working with us for this webinar. I thank all the participants that were here today, and then I want us to allow you, I think, Greg, you can come on and get people going on the survey and the completion of the certificate.
Yes. So I'm going to open up the survey right now. And it should open in a separate tab in your browser. And if you have time right now, please fill that out. If you don't, I'll also be emailing this link to you separately, so you'll have time to do that. I also want to remind you that this webinar will be available in archive format starting tomorrow at the napequity.org website. And if you happen to be watching the archived webinar, please refer back to the registration email with a link to the survey. Thank you, everyone. This is the end of the webinar.
Thank you, Greg.